This is Solely Ann Jones, my partner. And today we just got our brand new neon sign in for episode 2 of season 2 of Kitchen Table Research. Now, since we've started season 2, we have gone and built up a lot of content on our YouTube. We have taken content from Spotify and all of the episodes that were released in season 1, and we took a lot of our TikTok content and put it on YouTube. So you guys go check out our YouTube. We have had 15,000 views in the last week.
Cool.
So people are really enjoying our content, which makes me feel really good. But if you want to find out where you can find us, we are under Marcus the Bunny or Kitchen Table Research on TikTok. You can find us under Kitchen Table Research Podcast on Facebook and Kitchen Table Research on Instagram. And if you'd like to send us an email, which we love getting fan requests, it is kitchen.table.research@gmail.com. We also have a subscription plan on our TikTok, and our next stage in our process is getting our merch put on our TikTok shop. So we have done a lot in between seasons. I know we've re-streamlined our formatting, which has taken us a couple of months to get together. But I am so happy to be with you today, Jones. We are going to talk about Peggy McGuire. So how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I am not the smart one on this stuff. So if I make a mistake, you can't come through the screen and strangle me.
We occasionally, and we love getting more information or corrected information, but as content creators, we do make mistakes occasionally. So, um, today, and a lot of times, what one source in the media says does not match up with another one. And because we're working on missing cases of girls that haven't really been covered, there's just not a lot of information about their cases out there.
Right. And
Right.
a lot of it is still under police protection.
Because this
And
is
so,
considered an open, unsolved
right. And
homicide.
so, it's not like you can call the police station and go, hey, will you chit chat about this case with me? That just is not happening. We found what the families believe is some corruption in the police department, and we're deciding how to maneuver around that. And our next thing, I believe Anna is currently working on something different than what this podcast is about. But um, I think we're probably going to go to the Texas Rangers and see how they might be able to help us. And we'd love to close a couple of the cold cases we're working on. And I don't know that we'll be able to do that without the help of some agencies.
Yeah,
So
we're
good.
finding a lot of corruption in these missing women's cases. They seem to have a lot of similar threads through them. So when our last case that we talked about, Sandy Ray, which she just had her 40-year anniversary of her disappearance. So we did put a message out on TikTok about that. But we're going back to Oklahoma, and today we're talking about Peggy Ann McGuire. So I'm just going to read you briefly what I found off of the Charlie Project, and then I'm going to let you tell me the story. Does that work
Okay.
for you today? Okay.
Yep.
So Peggy Ann McGuire went missing November 16th of 2010 from Eufaula, Oklahoma. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Eufaula.
Yeah.
Okay.
Paula.
Eufaula. Okay. She was a 28 white female. She was 5'10", about roughly 150 pounds. She wore a size 10 shoe. So she's, a tall, um she's not a small woman. I would definitely say that. She's tall, and she did have one child. She is described as Caucasian female with blonde hair, blue eyes. McGuire has a scar on her right knee. She also has a tattoo on her lower back, and it's a horseshoe with stars and a four-leaf clover with the initials J and S. Her ears have also been or were pierced at the time of her disappearance. So, some of our sources for this story come from NAM US. Of course, I'm reading off of the Charlie Project, but some of the local news that covered it was KJRH, KFOR, Fox 23 News, the McAllister News Capital, NBC. There is a Facebook page for Peggy and her family. Um, KTUL, the Muskogee Phoenix, and Crime Watch Daily are the resources that we pulled from.
It's Muskogee.
The Muskogee Phoenix. And that's the name of like a paper.
Uh-huh. And that's the home of Waylon Jennings.
Oh, well, there you go. We're learning so much today. Unfortunately, what we're about to learn is not very fun. So why don't you tell us about Peggy?
Okay. Anna just covered the uh, where we're located. So we're currently waiting to hear the next steps as ordered by the courts in the Darley Routier case. And so we've taken a pause, and Anna just described what we did. I'm sorry. Sally just described what we did during our break. And a lot of that was content creation and trying to make this work in an easier format. So, if we
Well, and to
stumble,
just reach other platforms and to expand onto
right,
YouTube, which
and
was
to,
like,
and to strengthen our audience,
yes, exactly. Yeah.
you know. And so we're back with the Peggy McGuire case. I did this case before, probably summer. And so I had to go through it and read it last night to make sure I remembered the case.
Yes, we
So,
did do this one on our TikTok, but because we decided to do Oklahoma cases, we figured let's do their cases twice and let's get it put out on YouTube and this and that and as many platforms as we can. Because, like we said, we'd love to get some answers in some of these cold cases.
absolutely. And like I said, we are still awaiting kind of a court decision about the Darley Routier case. It's hung up in a DNA lab somewhere. Everybody in the world wants to submit DNA evidence, and they all want to use different agencies. And no wonder the court is confused. There is still evidence missing that could have been DNA. Don't know where it is. Would it have exonerated her back in 30, 40 years ago? Maybe. I don't know where all that stuff went.
Well, and
Neither, neither does the family.
I was gonna say I actually I have been working on another project still with Darley and some of the evidence that Jones is talking about is like Devin and Damon's clothes weren't tested. They said that they took fingernail clippings. They said that they took a washcloth and went under Darley's nails. However, that information or those pieces of evidence, we just don't know where they are. So, right now, we believe that the Innocence Project is testing pieces of evidence that they do have. We know that they are in the process of testing the sock, but as Jones stated, we're just in the hurry up and wait phase on that.
Yeah, and I find that pretty exasperating because after all, it has been 30 years. How long does it take to get evidence collected, cataloged, and sent to the best DNA facility in the state of Texas? And there's more than one in Texas that could do this. It's not like this is the only rodeo here in Texas.
Well,
So
it's bureaucracy, it's red tape, and this is why the wheels of justice turn so slowly. But
I
gosh,
get that, but 30 years is too long.
last night I was watching like a Sasha Reed documentary, and she was at CrimeCon in Nashville, and they are considering putting Robert Pickton, the most infamous serial killer out of Canada who killed up to 50 plus sex workers. He's up for probation this year or parole, and the RCMP, the
It's
Canadian
the Rocky
police,
Mountain,
yeah,
the Rocky Mountain Police. Yeah.
um, they are wanting to destroy all evidence related to the case. And I just saw that on the Sasha Reed documentary. So that's available on Hulu. It's Sasha Reed and the Midnight Order, and we really love the work that she does. So you guys should go check that out. But I'm like, how is this man that we know killed 50 women up for probation, yet our Darlie is still sitting on death row?
And problematically only being tried for one murder. I don't know if that, I said problematically, I don't know if that's a problem or
Well,
not, but
and I think what you're
it opens the door to, are you going to go back and try her for the older boy?
That's what I was gonna
Which,
say. I think what you're referring to is like she was only convicted for killing Damon, so the state would have the opportunity, if they chose to charge her with the death of Devin.
well, and Sully and I have strong ties to the state of Indiana. And within the last month, 6 weeks, I saw an article in the paper, I think I sent to Sully, that they have discovered 50 skeletons on a farm in Indiana, and they're going to try to reconstruct all that. Now, is that an Indian burial ground? I don't know. I would think the bones are too fresh for them to think that. I think there would
Yeah.
be some indication of that. So I think these are missing, abducted, killed, unalived women.
Yeah, that
And
just lived on the fringes of society, that weren't reported missing or were reported missing, and the
were
police didn't
reported
take it
missing.
seriously, like in all the other cases that we cover. And speaking of Indiana, going over state lines to Missouri, 2 days ago, the state of Missouri, despite getting 1.5 million signatures on a petition, executed an innocent man named Marcellus Williams. So we covered that on our TikTok as well.
I guess my question would be, did Marcellus have pretty good evidence that he was guilty, or is there a lot of deliberation back and forth as to whether he's guilty or not?
I know I read the Innocence Project page on it. It said that hairs found on the victim's body did not match his. It said the footprints, so I guess
Does,
the
does it
crime took.
match? Does
Yep.
it match anybody?
No, no. They tested against Marcellus, and I haven't read the trial. Um, you know, um, so I'm not like an expert in his case in particular. It just came to my attention in the last few weeks since his execution date was coming up. There were hairs found on the body that didn't match his. There were footprints that didn't match his. There was no fingerprints of his found. Um, and the prosecutor would not allow a black jury member on his jury, which to me, I'm like, you're prosecuting a black man. And when you say that you're going to be judged by a jury of your peers, I don't think 12 white jurors on a black man in Missouri in the 90s is a fair trial.
I agree with that. And obviously, I hope that our country is less inclined to do that to somebody else in the future.
Well,
Uh,
I told our fans, I said, the
I don't
only way we can do something about this is we are the ones that vote for our local and national representatives. We vote in our
know.
government. So we need to
And
be paying attention to what their ideals and what their ideologies
my,
are.
I told my husband, I said, back in the 60s, okay, now this is before I could ever vote. uh, the newspaper of the town we lived in would publish a page on the day before and the day of voting, and it would have columns, and it would tell all the candidates' viewpoints about things.
Right.
So if you wanted to know what religion they were, then hopefully that column was filled in. And so if you wanted to know what their stand was on certain things, you could use that as a reference. Well, now fast forward 40 years, I don't know what, I'm in Texas, so I don't know what Ted Cruz believes. I don't think I like him, but I don't know what he believes in.
Because they don't tell us.
And I find that very disturbing.
I find
I
that
find
very unfair to a country that is supposed to be a democratic country that's ran by the voice of the people. And I feel like we've lost our voice in some ways, and then in some ways, other voices have gotten so loud that it's
right.
obviously a
And I read
systematic
in
problem.
yesterday's, I follow the news pretty intensely. Every morning I read the news. And in yesterday's news was they put some secret border patrol down along
Yes.
the border to see what the border actually looked like. And they stopped at 5 border crossings and they said, oh, this is not nearly as bad as the media is making it out to be. And so we're supposed to build this wall, or we're supposed to keep these people out of our states and blah, 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 when in fact, it doesn't. And maybe I'm wrong, sound as bad as everybody wants us to believe. And I guess that's to harass down those people that believe in a border wall. So at this point, I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to believe anymore about any of the cases that we followed. The
Well,
only
we go
one,
to Mexico when we go to like Terralingo, which is on the Mexican border right there, and it's so safe. Like we've never seen anything. We have to, and like we don't cross the border, but we still have to go through border control because we're only like a mile from the border. But again, I'm like, it's so safe. Like there, no, at least on that part of the border, which I understand is very mountainous in that area, Big Bend area, but we go down there all the time and we're just like, we don't see the border issue with our
yeah,
own eyes where we
right.
go to the border in Texas. But like I said, I'm not going to
Well,
down to like El
and then we
Paso
report,
and
right.
yeah.
And then we reported on the Matamoros case.
Mhm.
Obviously, they did not cross the border well because they were kidnapped immediately after they got over the border.
Right.
So I don't know what the answer is, and I know we've kind of diverted our attention from what we
Yeah.
were
Well, that
talking
was a
about.
nice sidebar. I
Well,
because I think these
I think what
topics
I'm
are important.
finding is that you can't believe anything, and it doesn't matter whether it came from the media,
Fox,
a newspaper,
NBC,
it
Yahoo
doesn't matter.
News,
And maybe
Facebook.
they're only as good as their reporters are reporting, but I'm not sure their reporters are getting it right. Uh, we actually are going down to, and I never remember the C words, either Cancun or Cozumel
I
within the
think you guys
next
are going
couple
to
of weeks.
Cozumel.
Okay. And I just hope that is no big deal. I mean, we always fly into the Cabo airport. It's no big deal. We get off the plane. Now, I can say the last time we went down, there were armed guards at the resorts, and they would stop you and check, look at least into the bus to see if anybody looked shady. So I'm going to assume that's what happened this time. In between the last time we went to Cabo and today, supposedly the cartel
Hmm.
killed 4 people, cut their heads off, dumped them into the marina, and they were found a couple of days, their heads were found floating a couple of days later. So there's this part of me that thinks, maybe I need to really pay attention.
Yeah, but then
And
you're saying like, okay, they just did that, but then we just found 50 dead bodies in Indiana. So
I
like, are
know,
you scared to go to Indiana? Like, you know what I mean? And that's I think what we try to portray on our channel is learn these behaviors that these people do. Like, learn to not seem vulnerable. Like, when you're out by yourself, like, even if I'm at the grocery store and I'm with my son, I put my phone away so that I can stay cognizant of everything around me. when I'm driving, I pay attention to everything. Especially
I
when I'm just very cognizant and very
I have
aware.
not done a very good job of that. I haven't.
But I think I grew up in a different time where like you have literally said if Ted Bundy would have came up to me at that time
Really.
in my life, I probably would have helped him.
In college, I certainly would have.
So, and now in college, I'd be like, I don't know, maybe in college I still would have because I was, less naive. But now I'm like, oh, hell no, you have fun with that.
Yeah, really. Yeah,
No, I can't stop. Thank you. I'm on my way to do something. And,
right,
I
right.
just really cognizant and, we talk about safety, and I've kind of given you guys some of the safety measures I take. It's on our TikTok, but we've gotten way off track here. Although this was a great conversation, I'm glad I got to catch up with my mom for a few minutes. But let's get going back to Peggy McGuire.
Yeah, and I'm going to say one more thing. All of my family has this device that actually slides in the lock of your house,
Yes.
and we use it at night to lock our bedroom door because I mean it's just my husband and I. It's not like we've got kids that are going to run into the room or need us. And that's the way we lock our house up at night.
Well, and
And so,
you gave me one, and I take it like when I go on investigations or
absolutely
I'm going out to do something, I take mine with me everywhere I go. So if and I'm normally with a group of people when we go on
right.
investigations and stuff, but I do lock my hotel room with that.
I do too.
And when I'm traveling, and like me and my husband, we were in Mexico and Honduras and Florida earlier this year. It's in my travel bag because we take it
Yeah,
everywhere we go.
yeah. It's in my travel bag too. So good
Well,
for
we
us.
can on our YouTube in the description, we'll provide a link to that safety lock. So if you guys want to go pick that up, you guys can go do that. And while you're
Right.
picking up safety devices, if you don't have mace or something like that, I would just highly suggest that you get something. And after you listen to Peggy McGuire's story, you're gonna see why we advocate so much for just being safe and being aware. Although Peggy McGuire, I think we kind of know what happened, don't you?
I don't know. I was reading back through my script and I thought that is so not solved.
But
That
why? Because it's
I,
it's a solvable case.
I think it's the good old boy network.
I do too, and that's what we talked about in Sandy Ray.
Mhm.
And we're
Yeah, but
what? We're now about 30 years after Sandy, but I have had people on my TikTok and on YouTube say this is still going on. Like 40
the
year
scary
later,
part,
this is still happening. Like this has not
well,
stopped.
let's send the Cowboys in.
Well, I will say that if you do have any information before we get into this case, if you have any information, the McIntosh County Sheriff's Office can be reached at 918-689-2526, and the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigations also has this case, and their phone number is 918-423-6672. So why don't you get into who was Peggy McGuire? Who was she?
Well, Peggy McGuire was the cutest little 28-year-old RN that lived in Eufaula, Oklahoma. She was married. She had a son. She was on her way to work, stopped to get a drink from a 7-Eleven kind of place. And that's the last time anybody saw her. So let me start at the beginning, but that's the crux of the case. Um, I'm going to review. This happened in 2015, so it's not that old a case, 9 years old. And I want to talk about what happened in 2015, as we usually do. So let me get there. Obviously, one of the cases in Oklahoma that someday we'll cover is the Tulsa murders back in the early 1900s. where black people were just straight up murdered. There's also the Oklahoma Girl Scout case that I don't ever think has been told in this particular forum. It has never been solved either.
And we're going to cover it this season.
Okay. We're talking about there were 2 attacks in France from the extremist groups. Remember where the journalist was killed in
Was
the
that the
newspaper?
Charlie Abazoo thing?
Charlie Haddock
Oh,
case.
yeah. Okay. Yes, I
He
remember
was
that.
a journalist. They walked into the newspaper office and killed him.
For me, it was
And then
like a Muslim extremist group that
and
attacked a
then
French
within a
journalist.
few days, a nightclub was walked into, and several of those people were killed.
Was that the LGBTQ nightclub?
I don't know. I don't know.
Would have been. I don't. Gosh,
In the
we have.
United States in 2015, y'all are going to remember this. Remember when the 3-man prisoner group escaped from a prison up in the Upper East Coast? And we hunted them for days and days and days and days. We did finally find them. They were rearrested, remember, but the guard had snuck in tools because she was loving on one of them.
Yes, I do
And,
remember that.
and that's what they used to get out of their jail cell. So, all this stuff keeps going on. And there was also that intentional plane crash where they crashed into the mountain, and they believe the pilot, he'd locked out his co pilot. And once he did that, he intentionally crashed. It was a suicide. He crashed into the mountain, and all people on that plane were killed.
That was sad.
So, I keep thinking that nothing will ever happen to me. And the more we do these stories, the more I realize that it's entirely possible that something could happen to us. Um, and sometimes I get a little bit shaky because we've covered some tough cases.
I was gonna
And
say, like, even just doing the investigations and covering the cases that we do for our content creation, like, this is not an easy job. I go to sleep every night thinking about these people. I mean,
and I
Sandy
think
Ray has
about
weighed
poor
heavily on my
clues.
mind over the past
Right,
few weeks. And, like,
right.
Allie's case, which is so similar, it just, and I have dreams of being kidnapped. I have dreams of being assaulted. And, I am a victim of crime. And so, sometimes, when we say, look, we need to take a break, like that's what we're talking about. And
Mhm.
I do want to let everybody know that sadly, Marcus the Bunny, who was our mascot for Kitchen Table
I know.
Research, passed away on
But
Sunday.
we have new bunnies.
We did get 2 new bunnies. So if you guys want to go check that out, go to TikTok. I'm going to try not to derail you anymore,
Okay. So we're going to go to about a week before Thanksgiving. Peggy leaves her house with her 7-year-old son, Ethan. She drives him to Eufaula every day to go to school. And then she goes essentially back home. I would assume maybe she changes clothes, does something like that, and then heads to work, makes her lunch. She does work in a hospital. I'm fairly sure of that.
she was
And
an RN, so she could have been doing like 312s.
she could have.
Yeah.
And so she stops to get a Coke. She talks on her cell phone to her stepfather about some painting of the porch they were going to do that weekend. And last time ever seen. 3 days later, it takes them a while to report her as missing because her friend thinks she's gone to work. Her dad's like, well, I've heard from her. It's no big
Yeah, a
deal.
couple days ago.
A couple of days
Well, and
ago,
like
blah,
they're able to
blah.
get a hold of the husband, and he's like, "Oh,
And
she's at
they're
work."
they're shaky. She and husband are shaky. So, but he says she's at work, no big deal. Um, and he picked up Ethan from school that day because I've always wondered that. Did poor Ethan just get left at school to wander around the playground for 3 days? Because 3 days later, they found the pickup that Peggy drove in a bar parking lot.
So tell us about Peggy's husband then and their relationship.
will, but it comes further in my story.
Okay.
Do you want me to do that now?
It's your story.
Okay. So 3 days later, they find her pickup in a bar parking lot. Um, they go back through the closed caption TV, and they see a man get out of the pickup. They see no evidence of Peggy. They see a man get out of the pickup and walk slash run across the parking lot of the bar. Now, there are people that say he walks exactly like Peggy's husband, and there are people that say, no, he doesn't. This is just a fluke. Y'all are trying to read something into it. So,
Reading into CCTV footage and eyewitness testimony, we know how
right,
unreliable that can be.
you know how unreliable all that can be. So, um, about a year later, um, no sign of her. No ransom demand, no finding of a body, no DNA,
No
no
cell
nothing.
phones, no
No
credit card
cell phone.
hits, nothing.
I don't know whether they were able to
They did. I think they
to
did pull her credit cards.
pay.
But I think her
Yeah,
husband shut her accounts down.
okay.
Yeah.
And so
Oh, they're picking up my trash. You can probably hear it in the background. That's okay.
um about a year later, a man calls the police station and says, I do not live in McIntosh, Eufaula, Oklahoma anymore. But I know where Peggy's body is. And the police are like, wow, this is the first good lead we've had. They go to the lake where he says she has been sunk. They dredge the lake. They dredge it for 2 days. They find absolutely nothing. They find no sign of Peggy, no sign of boat, no sign of handcuffs, no sign of restraints, nothing like that.
And do we
Okay.
know whose property that he
I
reported that her
think it
body was
was,
on?
actually, I think it was a public park.
It was public. Okay, so it wasn't
I
private
think,
property.
so.
So it was a
I
public.
think
Because
so.
I was like, how did they have to get a search warrant? Like, how, so it was a public
I think
place.
so.
In
I
your
don't
okay,
think so.
in your research. Okay.
Right. And so they find nothing. And another year goes by, and I don't know why it took them so long to get an arrest, no, to get a search warrant for Peggy's house. Peggy and her husband's name is Thomas.
Thomas
For Peggy,
McGuire.
Thomas McGuire, uh, and son Ethan. Um, Although this was not Thomas's biologic child.
Right. It was
Okay,
his stepson. Ethan was
right,
Peggy had that in a previous. I don't think she'd
right.
been previously married, but she'd had a previous relationship that she had a child, Ethan, and then she goes on to marry Thomas McGuire.
Uh-huh.
Like a couple of
And
years later, right? I think Ethan
yeah,
was probably 3 or 4
yes,
when they get married because they'd only been
yeah,
married for a couple of years before she disappeared.
right.
Okay.
And so we finally get a search warrant to the McGuire house, and they find blood stains on the carpet. They find let me change this. They find what appears to be blood stains on the carpet, a chair, and the sofa. Were those tested? Were those actually DNA samples? We don't know.
I've never seen any lab reports that ever got
I've
tested.
seen any lab reports on DNA, and
And I've looked for them.
I have looked for them. So there's that. I don't know why a police department, they must have thought he was not guilty or they would have collected that evidence. Then a next door neighbor comes uh, over about at that year mark and says, well, I saw Thomas come home and he got into the backhoe and he went out to the field and he scooped, and that crane, that bucket, he drove down the road with it. The
With the bucket
bucket was
up.
bucket up. They did find some evidence of blood in the bucket. I don't know what happened to that evidence. I don't know where it's stored. Is it in some, storeroom evidence chamber somewhere? I don't know, because you can find nothing on this case. I mean, I'm telling you, it's very difficult to find. So Thomas McIntosh, even though he's a person of interest, has never been arrested for this crime. Okay.
Did the McIntosh family have ties back to law enforcement?
Oh, I'm sure they did. They had ties. It's McIntosh family lives in McIntosh County.
Oh, and I'm sorry. I was confusing McIntosh and McGuire. Did Thomas McGuire have family in?
Yes,
Yes.
his
Yes.
grandfather,
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. I
great
remembered
grand,
somebody in his family was in
that,
law
that
enforcement.
initially
Yeah.
settled that land. Yeah.
Because they were kind of a prominent family.
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Yes, they were.
And they owned a lot of land
Yes,
in
they
the
farmed
county.
a lot.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And there's a story about Thomas and Peggy and Ethan moving to Indiana to kind of get a fresh start. Okay, now a fresh start from what? I don't know. But they were fighting a lot. He got a job, she got a job. They lasted about 2 years and finally decided that Indiana was not where they wanted to live. They packed up and they came back to Oklahoma. Okay,
Okay.
so there's already mention of trouble between Thomason and Peggy McGuire.
Okay. Was there
Um,
alleged abuse in that relationship?
Not that I can find.
Okay.
Not that I can find.
Okay.
Um, and then I'm going to say, uh, time goes on. She's never been found. I keep saying that, but nothing,
I
nothing.
know. I mean, it's just like as a family, like, and as
Right.
a 7-year-old kid, your mom vanishes into thin air and it's just nothing.
Well, and I'm going to talk about Ethan for a little bit. So Ethan's 7 when she was taken, and they find him in about 20 miles down the road when he's 13 years old, and he's in Texarkana, and he has walked 20 miles from Eufaula to Texarkana. He seems to be fine. The police took him to the hospital where they rehydrated him, ran some labs just to make sure everything was okay, and discharged him from the hospital. I don't think he went back to Peggy's family. I think he was living with Peggy's family, but I don't think that's where he went back to, because I think he was just a troubled young teen. And doesn't that make sense when your mother disappears off the face of the planet 6 years before?
And there's a
I
possibility that your father is a
Right,
person
your
of interest
stepfather,
and they've
person
moved
of
him
interest.
from Indiana to this and he's
Right.
witnessed the fighting and
Yeah.
okay.
So I believe it. I never found this anywhere, but I believe he's put back into foster care. He's obviously, if this happened in 2015, he is close to being an adult, and it'll be interesting to see if he takes any further steps once he turns 21 and can actually access records. There is no trial because they never arrested anybody. You can't get your hands on any of the police reports.
Well,
Those
and
are
it's an
all.
open investigation, so that's standard protocol. Yeah.
And so that's where we stand today. A missing woman about 9 years ago, and there has been no sign of her.
So, from all of the story that I have read, do you want to hear my theory?
Sure.
Okay, so she drops Ethan off at school that morning, right? And I believe, like you said, she talked to her dad on the stepphone. On the stepphone. She talked to her stepdad on her cell phone when she's driving home. And they're talking about, hey, this weekend we're going to do some stuff around the house, paint the porch, whatever. And I believe she told her stepfather, hey, I'm going to go like lay down for a little bit maybe she had like an hour or two before her shift, or, I do the same thing. I take my kid to school and then sometimes come and lay down and then get my work done. You know what I mean? Like, so I think she had said that, I can't remember if she said maybe she had like a headache or just was kind of tired. So I think she told her stepdad she was going to go lay down. And I believe Thomas was in the house. Um, and they got into an argument, and I think Thomas murdered her on that couch where they found possible DNA and possible blood samples. I think that he put her body in the backhoe or somewhere, went and got Ethan from school. That night, while Ethan is asleep, he takes the backhoe that has Peggy's body in it, drives it wherever her remains are to this day, which we don't know. We don't know. They've never been found. And then he comes back home, and then he takes her truck and takes it to this bar. And it was called like T&E Ice. Hold on, I had it pulled up on the Charlie Project. It was found at a T&J Ice House, which, like you said, it was kind of a rural dive bar out on Highway 9. And just so everybody's aware, Peggy was not like the mom that went out to the bars and stuff. Like, she was not known to be a patron here, or, stay here and drink. That was never reported by her family or any of the patrons that did hang out at this T&J's Ice House. So I think Thomas planted Peggy's car there, although we see that somebody puts her car there and leaves on the CCTV footage, thinking like, oh, I'm going to make up this story that Peggy went and got drunk and went off with another guy, right?
Well, and let's go into the other guy's story because I did not cover that,
Okay.
and I meant to. I skipped over it and I didn't mean to. Peggy had been in contact with a man from the Dallas area. Now, whether that was through a dating website or if somebody had set them up, I don't think so because I don't think she'd ever met him before. And they were going to meet. She must have been off that day. They were going to meet that afternoon for lunch.
I think she was off that day because, like I said,
Uh,
because she went. I remember her telling her stepdad, like, "I'm gonna go lay down. Like, I have the day off. I'm gonna go lay down and get some rest," or like
so
she had a
they're,
headache or something.
they're supposed to meet at some town in between Dallas and Eufaula. And he calls and he says, I can't do it today. I've had some things come up. I've got some business to take care of. So his name was Richard. Richard and Peggy never met. But that was one of the first things the police decided is that Richard must have done it. Well, Richard did not do it. His alibi is crystal
Well, I was
clear.
gonna say, I mean, that is a very plausible lead
Fought.
that should have been followed up on. So, but he was cleared.
Yes.
He was alibied out.
So Peggy is actually looking. Maybe Thomas was at the house and killed her, but it's obvious that if she's out going to meet another man for lunch, something wasn't right in the
And maybe
house.
Thomas found out about it. Found her like maybe she laid down on the couch and fell asleep and he picked up her phone.
Her phone.
Because they had been talking about getting a divorce.
Yeah, I don't think it was the happiest marriage ever.
I think that she had told her parents that she had tried. Obviously, they moved to Indiana. She had tried to make it work. And I think Peggy was at the point where she knew this was not the best environment for her son Ethan to grow up in. And
Right,
clearly it
wasn't the best
wasn't.
environment for her or Ethan.
Yeah.
So that's the way the story ends. Never found. Gosh, I hope they find her. I doubt that. 9 years is a long time to lay somewhere and not decompose to ashes.
So it says, we talked about that there was blood on the couch on the back porch of the home that she shared with Thomas. There were also red stains on a pair of leather gloves that were in Thomas McIntosh's truck.
Okay.
Um, And it actually says on the Charlie Project that Thomas did tell Ethan, your mom met up with another man and ran away with him.
Oh, so let's make Ethan think the worst
Yeah, it
possible
says
of it.
according to McGuire's family and friends, she and McIntosh were high school sweethearts, and he had been physically abusing her for years. Goodness. So Thomas allegedly, according to the family, um, he had been abusing her. So McGuire got a protective order against him, her husband,
Right?
and later pressed charges against him for battery. But she reconciled with him because she wanted a secure life and to try and protect her son. So the protective order and the charges never went through.
And how many times does it take a battered and abused woman to leave the batterer?
About seven
You
times,
remember?
is that,
Yeah,
or about 7 times?
7 times before a woman will leave a man who is abusive to her. That statistic takes my breath away.
Well, and sorry, because it's McIntosh and McGuire. So it's Peggy McGuire. She never
Right?
changed her name over to McIntosh. So
Okay.
Thomas McIntosh was a very, like you said, prevalent, prominent family. The county was named after their family because they
Right.
owned a lot of land. So out of all the land that they owned, if he had a backhoe, they've never gotten a search warrant to like get cadaver dogs out there or GPR or anything. Like
Not,
that
not,
seems.
not that I am aware of.
So it says at the time of her disappearance, Peggy was planning on leaving Thomas McIntosh for good. They were still living together, and it said their relationship had turned platonic. And Peggy, like you said, was seeing another man, Richard. She had gotten a nursing degree and a job as a licensed practical nurse, so an LPN at Wellington Hills Nursing Center at the time of her disappearance. She had just passed her boards in June of 2015 and she went missing in November. And that's so sad.
It is sad.
It said Peggy loved animals and left behind pet dogs that she cared for and a small herd of goats, and they had 150 head of cattle.
On their land, not on Grandpa's land.
It doesn't say whose land it was on, but I'm guessing that was
150
probably through the McIntosh family. Yeah.
150 head of cattle is quite a bit to care for.
Well, and like you said, if they're a prominent family, like cattle ranching and owning land out there, that's a
It's lucrative.
big deal. It said, so she loved animals, had a small herd of goats, and cared for 150 head of cattle, enjoyed the outdoors. She loved to hunt and camp. Camping was like her thing that she did with Ethan that she loved. Her family said she would have never abandoned her son and that she was a very dedicated mother. McGuire's mother, Peggy's mother, subsequently sued for visitation rights for her grandson, stating in court documents that she hadn't seen him since her daughter disappeared. So Thomas took Ethan away from his family. That wasn't even his biological child.
Yeah. Wow.
Peggy's mother believes that Peggy is deceased. Unfortunately, her mother believes that Peggy was murdered, and she thought her grandson was at risk for physical and or emotional abuse at the hands of Thomas McIntosh. So she sued and
Uh,
did get custody of Ethan. So there's your answer for that. Yep, it says since her disappearance, Peggy has not used any cellular phones, credit cards, or her social security number. Foul play is suspected in her case, which remains unsolved to this day.
Sad case.
I mean,
Sad.
I'm like, Thomas did, and allegedly, I don't want to go pointing fingers at people, but come on, guys. Like, don't you think Thomas did this? Who
I
else has
don't
the
know what
motive, opportunity, and means if there's blood
exactly.
inside of their home? Now, if she had been abducted, at the gas station down the street and her car was parked somewhere random by some random person, but we know she went home. I mean, she told her stepdad on the phone she was going home. We see that there's possible
Well,
DNA evidence at the crime scene, possible crime scene. I mean, I think that Thomas murdered her that morning.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I think
I think that
her,
really after Peggy got off the phone with her stepdad, I bet it wasn't even an hour later until Thomas murdered her,
she
in
was
my
disappeared.
opinion.
Well, and I think
Because he
it's
would have needed the time before having to get Ethan from school so that Ethan wouldn't see anything.
right,
So he had to
right.
get her body out of the house and into something, which would be the dump
Correct.
bucket,
Yep,
the
correct.
backhoe
Yeah,
or whatever. Yeah. And
yep,
and I heard in some podcasts and stuff that talked about this, and I live in like a farming rural community, like you don't drive with the bucket up. If there's
right.
nothing in it, you
You
drive
drop
with the
bucket down.
bucket down. And so people did see Thomas driving that
Right,
backhoe or whatever piece of whatever it was, with the bucket up, and it's believes because Peggy's body was in there and he
right.
didn't want anybody to see it. So people did
Dump it
state
out on
that
the
they
floor.
saw him in that, piece of machinery with that bucket up. So I'm surprised that the police didn't go all in for him and pull him in and polygraph him, but I don't see that they did any of that besides search the home. And then
Well,
I don't see that they took any samples or did anything with.
unless the story is hidden because they think maybe they'll get an arrest in the future and they don't want to contaminate it. I don't know, but it does seem weird that the story kind of boom
Well,
ends.
and I think, and like you're right. You're absolutely right. Because this is an open, unsolved investigation, the police may have lab results and may be pursuing a case against Thomas, and we aren't, the public's not aware of that.
Right,
That could always be a possibility.
right. It is. So, well, all right.
Well,
That
that is sadly the small amount of information that we have about Peggy, but we wanted to get her story out there just like Sandy Ray. I'm going to read you guys off the Charlie Project one more time. So, her name was Peggy Ann McGuire. She was missing on November 16th, 2015 from Eufaula, Oklahoma. She's classified as an endangered missing female. She was 28 years old, so today she'd be about what, 38, about almost 40. She's a
yep.
white female, 5'10", about 150 pounds, size 10 shoes. She was a Caucasian female with blonde hair and blue eyes. She has a scar on her right knee. She has a tattoo on her lower back of a horseshoe with stars and a four-leaf clover with faded initials J and S. And her
Do we
ears
know
were
who
pierced.
JNS is?
I'm wondering if that's the father of her child.
Yeah,
Yeah. Here, let me pull up a picture of Peggy. I want to show it to you because, like Joan said, she is the most adorable.
she's cutie pie.
I know. Here, let me flip this and see if you guys can see it. Yeah, I mean, she's just such a beautiful woman. Blonde.
Are those all pictures of Peggy?
Yeah, this is right off the Charlie Project. And we'll put
Okay.
pictures
Yeah,
up on our
they're very
TikToks and
hard.
our
They're
shorts.
very see, they're fuzzy.
Yeah, yeah, they're fuzzy. So we'll put them up. We'll splice them in when we edit and put them on some shorts on our TikTok. So what we're doing right now is full episodes are going to go to YouTube, and then the audio will hit our audio platforms like Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, all of that stuff. And then we're going to put some shorts out on TikTok just because their community guidelines makes it difficult to talk about true crime on TikTok. So we decided to pull shorts from our full videos to put on TikTok. And then right from our TikTok, you can hit our YouTube link right there in the same place and it'll take you directly to the full video.
Well, I am not a TikTok user. I have begun to use it only because of the projects that we're working on. But could you someday give us a 5 minute lesson on those of us that don't know how to use TikTok?
Yeah,
I can
absolutely. I would
I
love
can
to.
order from TikTok. I do want you to know that.
Why don't
Ordering's not been a problem. I'm teasing.
I'm like,
I'm
did you
getting
see the wheels
TikTok
turn?
and I'm
Next time we do
mailbox.
one, how about at the end of the video, I will show you how to go through and use our TikTok. I want to be able to
Okay.
share my screen with you guys. But um, basically from our profile, our YouTube and everything are all clickable links right here. You can't see it, but it's all clickable links. It has our TikTok shop, which every product in there is products that we use and love. But we have some of the Pure products, Rise products, Mavwicks Candle Company. Love some of their stuff. Of course, we are sponsored by Liquid Death. Um, you can murder your thirst this fall. This is just a brand of water. That's their logo. This is the berry flavor, Bury It Alive, and it's murder your thirst. That is their slogan. So that is who we're being sponsored by today. But yes, next time I'll share my screen with you and I'll guide you through TikTok because I know there's a lot of people out there, and TikTok is a wild beast. Like,
Well,
I feel like
I
by
don't
the time
want to
I get it
know
figured out, then I
anything.
learn something new, or somebody
Yeah,
gives me
I know.
information that I'm like, I didn't know that. So,
I didn't. Oh,
so that's why
so,
we decided to back everything up to YouTube because we feel like YouTube is, probably one of the best platforms for the type of content that we do. So,
well, it's been around for longer.
well, and there's all this talk about TikTok could go away and da 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 ba 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 ba. Well, you know what? As content creators, we just roll with the punches, and whatever we do,
It
we
goes
do.
away, figure it out.
Yep.
I do want to ask you a question, and I think you've touched on this before. Um, when we went to Crime Con, John Ramsey, John Benet Ramsey's father, was at Crime Con, and he did a couple of presentations. And one of his presentations was about the need for a victim
Advocacy group, kind of.
advocacy group. And so he asked if the participants at CrimeCon would put together letters to send to the Senate or to him, and he would forward them about what needs to happen in this country so that Anna and I can no longer make TikToks and YouTubes and podcasts. Okay. And then I noticed the other day, I didn't listen to it yet, but I noticed that you put up the Indigenous women's uh,
Mm.
TikTok and then or YouTube, and then we probably ought to go back at some point and redo the El Paso Juarez
Yeah, I agree.
because there's a lot of women missing in the desert out there.
There's been a lot of updates in that case since we covered it,
Yes,
what, 2 or 3
there's a
years
lot
ago.
of cartel members that have been arrested. Now, prosecuted, I don't know about, but maybe we ought to relook at that because there is new information on those cases.
Yeah, I
And,
would love to recover that case. And we kind of shoved a lot of a lot of really crazy
well,
information into a
because
short.
nobody recognized that there were women getting kidnapped
Yeah.
until these reporters started talking about it. Well, then the reporters get killed.
Yeah.
Hard to talk about it when you're dead.
Well,
So
and
there
Robert
is,
Ressler helped in the
right,
beginning with that case, and he was on Mine Hunters, and so we saw his
right.
partner John Douglas speak at CrimeCon. But actually, going back to the victim advocacy thing that John Ramsey is doing, so it's called like the Victims of Homicide Act. I think it was enacted in 2022, and CrimeCon helped push it through and get it through the Senate and get the signatures needed. And it's basically that if the victims of a crime want further testing done, like say Peggy McGuire's family says, hey, I want this couch and stuff tested, then the FBI is legally allowed to come in and do that under certain ramifications.
Okay.
So
Okay. So
the
it, it,
act is trying to get the
it
FBI more involved, especially in children under 18
yeah,
cases. Yeah,
yeah.
that's where he's really. I mean, I kind of use Peggy McGuire as an example, but for the FBI to have legality and to do all the DNA testing through the FBI's laboratories where there is a murdered or missing child under the age of 18. So we've
So,
got some advocates that we've met through our travels and through our journeys and some of the cases that we worked. And so we are putting together an advocacy letter for John Ramsey. And then I need to send it to you, but I was on Instagram, I think yesterday, and Mile Higher, Kendall Ray and her husband Josh You
I
would know
can't hear.
Kendall Ray. She does a lot of true crime.
Oh, yeah, I know she is. I can't hear you. You're cutting in and out.
Oh, okay. So they just enacted like a Change for Hope platform that they just came out with yesterday, pushing advocacy for missing people. And so I am hoping maybe we can send them our advocacy stuff to their advocacy group and we can advocate together.
Well, or maybe just form one advocacy group in the United States and let's see how many of these we can solve.
Yeah,
It appears to me, at least for Texas, this is true, that there is some kind of a missing children's bureau that the state volunteers run. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I've not investigated that yet. But wouldn't it be? I mean, we know we have missing children that
never come.
John Walsh
Right.
started.
John
Uh,
Walsh was like, I feel like the first advocate. And then, of course, Amber Hagerman's case with the Amber
right.
Alerts was kind of like the next progression in finding missing children.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what I wish would happen on the Amber Alerts? I wish they'd tell us when they found them.
I do too. And actually, the other day, because we've been looking at a lot of these missing people, and some of the cases we've done are children under 18. And I'm like, why did an Amber Alert not go out for them? I learned from somebody that I talked to that helps with the organization. There has to be a witness and a description of the kidnapper, along with a description of the car, especially with the license plate. Not always, they don't need the license plate. And I'm like, but how many children get kidnapped where there's not a witness? So they
It's a
can't
lot.
put out an Amber Alert unless they have the description of the kidnapper and the description of the vehicle. So that was something I learned because I'm like, why are there not Amber Alerts?
How long did it take for them to find Amber? I know she was found in a creek bed or
Yeah, I'm
something.
not sure. I feel like it's very similar to John Welsh's case, like maybe a couple of weeks, I want to say,
Mhm.
but I haven't looked at the Amber Hagerman case in
Well, and
a
you
couple
know,
of years.
like, if y'all would like to hear about the Amber Hagerman case,
Let us
let us
know.
know because it's a Dallas area
Yeah, I'm like,
story.
that's a case we know pretty well because that happened while we
We
lived in
lived,
Dallas.
yeah,
And
we
we
lived.
looked at the Amber Hagerman case when we were studying Darlie Routier and looking at other child murderers that could have been in the area at that time.
Absolutely.
So that's the last time I looked at the Amber. It's been about a year ago, I think. So, all right. Well, again, let's keep praying for Darlie. Let's keep praying for these missing women. Let's see if we can enact some change. That's what we're here to do. That's what Kitchen Table Research is all about. So, you guys continue. Thank you so much for engaging. And we've got like over 500 watch hours on our YouTube in the last week. So, people do enjoy our content. And I just want to say, we don't have voices until you guys listen to them. So, thank you so much to our fans for pushing us out there and getting us going and keeping us motivated and inspiring hope. And I hope that we are doing the same thing for you guys. If you have any questions or comments, you guys know where to find us. Find us on TikTok under Kitchen Table Research or go to our YouTube page under Kitchen Table Research. And please feel free to send us an email at kitchen.table.research@gmail.com. I don't have anything else to say. This was a lovely kind. We don't normally chit chat as much, but we just don't have a lot of information in this case. So it was good to see
Well,
you today.
and some of this was catching up, was just kind of telling you what's happened in the
Yeah.
last few weeks as we've been on this break.
So
Because
actually, on my little pivot board here, our next case is the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. So we will begin
oh,
to
I
research
thought
that.
our next case was, I don't know. I'll go to work on the Oklahoma Girl Scout murder.
Because we're going to do the
I
Oklahoma
thought
Girl
we were
Scout murders. I think the Tulsa race. Oh,
gonna,
I'm dead.
but okay, aren't we going to do? Never mind.